Hello guys, good morning for me. I don't know which time zone are you. This is a great pleasure to be moderating this roundtable, this virtual roundtable, which is a collaboration between ArchDaily and LifeCycles. To start, I would ask you to please introduce yourself briefly. I will start introducing myself. My name is Eduardo. I work for ArchDaily. I'm one of the editors. I'm an architect and I lived in the south of Brazil. Please go ahead.
I'm Sinus Lynge. I'm a co-founder of Effekt Architects. We're located in Copenhagen, and I'm happy to be back at work today. We've just opened the office last week, so everybody is back doing their projects in the office, and we work within urban planning and architecture and research.
So I'm Lina Ghotmeh. I'm founder of Ghotmeh Architecture in Paris. We're set here in the center of Paris, where my office is still teleworking, so we're now in between situation. We work a lot of research-driven projects as part of our process, also cultural projects, residential. Every time it's a new research, a new kind of adventure for every project.
My name is David Gianotten. I'm managing partner and architect at Ghotmeh and lead the firm worldwide and also are involved in many of the research projects related to sustainability.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, this talk will be about our future environment and the crossover with communities. Buildings and construction play a major part in climate breakdown and biodiversity loss. For everyone working in the construction industry, meeting the needs of society without breaching the Earth's ecological boundaries will demand a paradigm shift in behavior. The urban landscape is constantly transforming to meet the changing social, economic, environment, natural, and technological needs. Aging populations, sharing an economy, urbanization, religion, flexible homes, education, improving the social dimension and creating social value are vital elements in the process of urban regeneration and architecture. The main question is how to design, build, and share our future homes, cities, and neighborhoods. Okay, I will start with this first question, and whoever feels comfortable can start talking. The current coronavirus situation has a huge impact on our entire world. What is the future of neighborhood, community, and social life in the city? Do you think COVID will change the way we design our cities or speed up existing evolutions?
For sure, it will have an impact. It's very clear that something that is so impactful over the whole world will have an impact also on our profession and on living in cities. The way it has spread over the world is obviously through a concentration of people. And since now about 60% of the entire society lives in cities, these cities are of course the main point of the start of this worldwide crisis. However, you can also imagine that kind of a post-COVID situation is not an immediate change, but is a tuning of an effect that is already long in city planning and needs acceleration and needs extra fuel to regenerate cities in a way that it is not only catering for their needs now or catering for the political needs of 4 years ahead, but that it is catering for a long-term future in a total different way than it does today.
Yes, totally. I agree. Like it's all about the question of time. How much, how we will live the situation through time. And today, what we see, we're talking about rising new communities or new ways of being together. And I think the COVID has proven that we are also one community all over the world, and the action of one has a direct influence on the other. So in a way, rather than thinking of community as a localized number of people on a certain geography, we are on the world in general as one community that is able to act in a very fast manner. And that's what we, in a way, learned from this crisis, is our power of action on a global scale. And in a very speedy way as well, we are able to really take action and change our behavior immediately. Another thing about also the community being like another form of community that is possible through what we learned from the crisis is the fact that as people we are able to work remotely, even if we are in a village or in a forest or in a house in the middle of almost nowhere. And to even be, to always keep on being very efficient as part of the society and contribute as a working power. That means that in that sense, we are also able to build a community physically outside of the city precinct itself, the city as an urban, dense environment. So it also gives way for a rural community to be able to rise and to have access to much more developed means and much more presence in our global economy than it is at the moment. So it's quite interesting actually to really think deeply on what we learn and what are today the tools that we have to change the paradigm of how we construct our economies today.
Yeah. Well, to follow up on that, I very much agree that one of the biggest impressions for me has to see the world change, like this. In so few weeks, you've seen a close down of the world economy, and understanding that can happen is also, I think, maybe it can kind of ignite a hope that we can see also the willingness to take action when the next big crisis, the climate crisis, is going to be appearing as urgent as the COVID-19 crisis. I think that it's, we've been talking about the climate crisis for so many years, but it's been constantly as a future threat, really difficult to kind of understand and grasp. And we've seen a lack of willingness to take action. And suddenly seeing the whole world community doing this for a pandemia is, I think there's kind of an empowering aspect of that. It's also kind of showing a vulnerability that I think you didn't see in the global community before, because suddenly sort of microscopic germ is just kind of infected the entire human community across continents. And I just think that's kind of, it's both. Even though we get disconnected, it also connects us in a way that I think we haven't been seeing in that way before. So I'm sure it will change our conception about how we live together in the global community.
And even about the public space, do you think we will design them differently from now on?
In a way, I hope not. I mean, what you can also totally clearly see is that humans are so social. I mean, we really suffer when we can't meet in bars and hang out in public spaces and use the playgrounds and go to school and work and be together. So I think that's kind of really coming out clear how social we actually are.
Yeah.
I think it will probably have less an effect on public space than on private space, because public space is where we meet, and we might have to do social distancing, but we still want to meet. I think private space in itself will become much more structured and potentially even much more technically advanced, related to hygiene, related to kind of being able to monitor health, etc., etc. But I think in public space, that's actually the moment where we reach out and there where we go to interact more and more. So we might kind of retrieve even more into privacy when we don't meet, and that has probably a bigger consequence than when we reach out and try to make contact. However, how to do that in a safe way, if something like this is there or something else, which is, by the way, not something that is only an incident that's happening for the first time in the world. It's it's something reoccurring, but this is the first time in this time frame and with such a huge immediate impact. I think it will probably make the segregation between privacy and public bigger, but in public we probably still long for proximity. We still long for a health and green environment. We long for movement. We long for this constant activity of that is curated and happenings that can take place. So sure, in our heads it will have an impact, but if it is physically immediately changing public space, I don't think the public spaces that will be designed tomorrow are different than we designed yesterday.
I mean, in my mind, I think the sense, also if I take the sense of the question differently, in a way, the COVID crisis, I don't think it will last forever. Of course, we will be living through that, but at the same time, we are going to devise the tools to live with this, if this lasts anyway. And these tools would be maybe instruments or masks or whatever, something that is more closer to our body and which allows us more of a freedom of movement. So in that sense, our practice of the public space will remain, and the need of it and of the interaction will also remain. But the question of the crisis and COVID is interesting in the sense of changing our perception and of the function of the public space itself. Because as you see today, we are already, all of us working, most of us working at home, or like my team is working at home. I'm coming to my atelier. I live really close to my space. This is why I was able to be here. So in a way, as you were saying, David, we're always almost in one place. We're static, more static, let's say, in one place, and that forces that place, which is our home, to be more flexible and to be able to cater for different functions in one place, like working, going out a little bit, living there, encountering, etc. So you don't have anymore these other offices, buildings that we have as much as we have them now. So it will change. So the question would be, why would we go out? So what's the quality of that public space? And this is what will affect the spaces themselves. They will have to have maybe more natural quality. They have to encompass nature, because we will need that more. If we're more in one, like static in one place, we need more to be close to nature. So these public spaces become more parks-like. These will be places where heightened interaction can happen, in the reverse, complete opposite actually of what we maybe think now, that we will have to be distanced. No, I think it will be a place where really we need to be interactive, where we have to meet each other, where we have to create events where there will be heightened places of activities and events and art, etc. So it's really an interesting thinking time at the moment into projecting and changing the way we perceive today the functions of our spaces.
But Lina, you were talking about like how our homes will have more programs and more functions in itself. Can you talk a little more about it? What do you think?
At the moment, of course, we see that in all of the cities. We work in Europe, all of us, and around the world, and we see how we are thriving for houses that are able to change very quickly, to house, for example, a couple, then their children, then maybe grow more and have a multi-generational house. Now it's being pushed even further. And this trend has been started even before the COVID, where people would work at home, and this becomes your office home place. So you would need a space where you're able to concentrate, to work, and has a bit of a diverse quality than that of your house only. So you have the house or the home becomes a flexible place that can at the same time simultaneously be a working place, a library, because you're just gonna sit and read, a conference place where you just change your background. You don't want people to see the kitchen behind you, and you just become in a much more formal conference, a little museum, because you want to just think differently. So this kind of intersection of different functions that could happen within this microcosmic world that is home or habitat in a larger sense of the word, rather than just a sleeping and eating place that you visit in the morning and at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Worldwide houses are sold by bedrooms, numbers of bedrooms, and kind of programs are given to architects by numbers of bedrooms. Hopefully we will see a change in kind of the variety, not like a studio, a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or 3-bedroom, or a villa with 20, but that we start seeing differentiation in space, that we start seeing differentiation in the way people actually value space, is not just to sleep and to leave again, but is to reside and gain knowledge. And I think that change we will see in our private spaces much faster than in the public domain.
I also think, I mean, there's been something that we've been talking about for ages, that now that you have digital communication, then suddenly you don't need to travel or to go and meet. But in fact, we've all gone to meet up physically, and we've all commuted like daily trips for hours forth and back to work. And I think suddenly having to kind of stop that has also kind of, to me, it's kind of a tipping point where the digital media of meeting, and so actually it just suddenly it works, and also the connections are good enough. So the change in work culture, I'm sure for my office we are going to take fewer flights to do physical meetings, because we've seen now that it can actually work. So it's not that it's stopping, but I'm sure that there'll be fewer days that you work, more days where you will work from home, and more meetings that you won't fly out to have, but will try to have. And that, to be honest, it's been, even though we've been super busy in this office, it's been more quiet because people are not traveling all the time, and that has a quality also, that you have more time to actually stay where you are and be with the people that are around you. So I think that quality is also something that is there to stay.
But we obviously also need to acknowledge that is mainly for the world where the economies are supporting these type of good facilities. Kind of the places in the world where we can make most impact will be shielded from that more and more, and we need to be careful that it's not segregation by connection, but that it is that architects and planners also still take the responsibility to cater for places where this luxury, if you could call it, and that we now test that it works, is not working yet, because the biggest problem areas in the world obviously don't have this connectivity digitally, don't have this possibility of flexibility of more spaces in a house because they're already happy when they have one. So we also have to acknowledge that kind of, although we learn a lot from COVID, big parts of the world are also excluded from this learning curve. And we as architects and planners have also a huge responsibility that these areas are actually upgraded to not be in the end where that takes part and we exempt ourselves from it.
Yeah. I mean, these areas of the world, of course, they have to be part of a new system, and this is the challenge. This is what brings us again to the climate transition and to new economies. And is the question: how can we build a much more sustainable economy and much more circular economy that is based on no waste, basically no waste in terms of intelligence, in terms of human capacities, and no waste in terms of material as well. And in that sense, you won't have any more waste cities. You won't have derelict places where they are marginalized. If the economy functions in a much circular manner, every single part of this circle and of the chain becomes important. But this needs a very a big shift from us, from everyone, from politics as much as from people themselves, to build this kind of a new way of making. And talking about travels, it's true that now we're traveling much less. I'm used to be every week somewhere, but it's a bit strange because at the same time there's some kind of thrill with the travel, with meeting new cultures, with discovering new places, and we need that as humans. We need to, this diversity and this encounter with new people and just seeing them, and shaking the hands or hugging people. So, and now we're on the extreme opposites. So this kind of gap need to be filled with another. In another way, if we remain static, if we travel less, we need spaces that are around us that are more challenging, that they are more richer than what we have at the moment around us as well.
Yeah, but I just really enjoy to get rid of the commute for my sake. I mean, the flights to meet clients forth and back, the layover in airports, hotels and stuff, to get rid of that and get that out of your life is actually a big relief, not to mention all the people who commute for hours every day. That time is really kind of not quality time, at least in my book, but the trips and being together with people across the world is of course something that I also miss. I just think that the level, and I realize that's not in that's not for every home that have this kind of internet connections, but the quality of connecting right now has just reached a level where you can actually have pretty good meetings, and you can have intimate dialogues with the client. I have a friend who kind of fell in love during the COVID crisis online, just because they couldn't meet up. It was a person from a different country. And it's just, these things are just happening more and more because of the technology is allowing for it. And I think that this crisis does make it a tipping point where we'll just see more and more of that sort of meetings and explore the potentials in that as well. Mm. Which eventually I think will also be empowering for people in less resourceful areas of the world. I hope, at least.
I think it's interesting to talk about it. Like for example, now that planes, airports, and even the public transportation is something that is very a potential place to be sick. Biking is being encouraged in a lot of cities. I know that Copenhagen is an example for all over the world, but how do you think this this can change the neighborhoods and the cities, how the bike can change it.
Well, we can start in Copenhagen then. I mean, what's happened in the center of Copenhagen is just that it's pretty difficult by now to get around in cars. So people are using the bike as commute, and it's I think it's just really changing the city, that kind of space that is taken up by cars for parking, and the many lanes you need to bring people forth and back in car is changing into much smaller spaces, even though you have quite busy bike lanes. It's the same in Holland, I think. But it does make a big difference in terms of city life and city quality to have. It's mainly kind of whether you use the space for cars and bikes, because I think we still need the cars, but the dense part of the city is very smart to have smaller vehicles like bikes.
Mm. And as part of the regulation in France, for example, the regulation evolved to oblige buildings to have larger spaces for parking the bikes. So that means it's also encouraging soft transport and biking. You can see also that, of course, the capacity of sharing the cars is, you have the public pool of cars, electric cars that people share. So you are prone less to own your own car, which you would have to manage and pay and sustain, etc. So it changes the mobility and the transport, and as well as our experience of our environment in that sense.
I think we can already not speak anymore about bikes in general. Kind of, if you see the development of the bike, it becomes a very versatile type of vehicle almost, where you have a leisure bike, where you have a speed bike, where you have an electric bike for long distances, where in the Netherlands you have bike lanes for people that go to with kids, that you have lanes for people that go 35 kilometers an hour, that you have leisure routes. Kind of what you see is that the bike in general just kind of gives an answer to different modes of transport rather than just being an alternative. And the development of the bike in that sense is huge. So what we see here in the Netherlands, where biking is already for a long time a main form of transport in cities, we have 35,000 kilometers of free bike lanes in this country. And when I grew up, that was normal. If I go into Amsterdam city, I don't live in the city center, I live in the east of the city. But if I go to the city center, I would not even think about taking a tram or a car, because I will be faster on my bike and I will be much more individual, and I can go wherever I want to go. And the city is also built like that, and cars will just be completely outfaced, and they will be on the outskirts of the cities, or be parked there, and then you go with public transport or even with bikes that are just on a path into the city. However, it also raises a question of scale in the city, because what you see is that cities are designed in a way quite traditionally, with kind of public transport in the middle, bike or cars creating the profile of streets, and then bikes being in the Netherlands on the outside, in many countries still on these car lanes, and then pedestrians, and then the buildings. I think this new way of looking at the bike, you can also completely restructure the profile physical profile of cities, and therefore we can also find a lot of space that we're currently not using efficiently for public space, for meeting, for nature. A very important thing is bringing nature back into the city, and I think there's a lot of space to gain from especially mobility, so the city can unlock this complex density question of a city by completely rethinking the profile of a city. And that is, to me, interesting, connect to the fact that it is not one type of mobility anymore. Maybe in big parts of the world, the bike is still a bike, but I think in there where it is already used as the main form of transport, Denmark is a good example, Holland is a good example. There you already see that it is kind of a mobility question that goes in different speeds, that goes to different destinations, long distance, short distance, with many people. There are bikes here where you have 4 kids in your bike and you bring them to school. So it's a total, it's a world that is changing extremely quickly and actually makes us capable of rethinking the profile of a city, in my opinion.
But I love your point about the evolution of a bike becoming like so many different modes of transport, different reach and speed and capacities. And I think like it's a perfect example of the application of technology, where the bike itself is a really old technology. It's not something new, but at least in Copenhagen, we started kind of reapplying the conception of biking as a means of transportation and supporting that back in the 70s. And I think that goes for Holland as well. And I think that's also why you've seen this explosion in the evolution of bikes and bikeable lanes and ways of commuting on bike. And I just think it's a quite interesting concept in terms of what actually sometimes is needed to change our cities. It's about how we apply new technologies in clever ways, or even old technologies. And I think the same applies to energy, water collection, and other issues. In Denmark, we have huge problems with stormwater. When we have the heavy rains, it's kind of the sewage is overloaded, and we have flooding on the streets. And basically, at the same time, we have a problem with overconsumption of water. So if we're just able to kind of take these things that are actually landing straight on the roof and apply them in different ways, I think there's so much we can kind of enhance in our cities by taking the technology we already have and consider cleverly how we can apply them.
Yeah, it means like also it's interesting what you're saying is how we can take inventions, old inventions, and think about an evolution and projecting past knowledge into the future, into the means that we have at the moment. Technological means that we have at the moment, because I mean we're talking about bikes, but there are so many soft mobilities that are being developed at the moment, like scooters, these one-person wheels, segways, or whatever other means. And all of them are working on the efficiency of the mobility, both in terms of space efficiency and in terms of energy efficiency. How can we move taking the least space, consuming the least ourselves, and being able to consume the least energy as well? And that also brings us to the question of distance. Why would we move actually? And do we need to move very far away, or we just move in a smaller circle for our daily life? And larger commuting will become like more efficient trains and other means of of faster commuting on a much global scale. So it draws an efficiency also in our road networks. Our roads, maybe the place of the cars is not anymore needed as much as it's needed today. Maybe we'll have less cars that are electric cars. We know that all of us that automated cars will be are more likely to be the future. And we will have, instead of these streets, bringing back the nature, and maybe we will just have forest instead of all these streets and just one lane of cars that would be going through. So definitely this new type of, or new old type of mobility thought into the future and into our actual needs will transform the shape of the city and its own experience as well.
What is also interesting to see is currently that kind of, well, all the countries have huge financial issues because of the crisis, that the investment into sustainable solutions, the investment in kind of the climate policies of countries, the investment in the change of using our space more efficiently and our energy resources more efficiently is actually booming up during this crisis, because everybody sees the effect of kind of a more sustainable way of moving and sustainable way of staying at home. So you see actually there where we asked for a very long time for innovation and investment, it actually also turns out that kind of even a crisis like this doesn't kill it. So it already proved itself of being extremely strong and extremely important. And you see kind of governments, mainly democratic governments, but also governments where other regimes are important, to heavily invest in that while they could use the resources for the old economy, to support the old economy. And that to me is also a very interesting given of this kind of 2.5, 3 months now, where you see that kind of immediately the awareness of where to invest and to invest in this more sustainable growth, sustainable mobility, sustainable energy resources, to try to avoid a constant condition where you need to rely on long distance traveling and everything that is connected to it in the economy becomes very apparent. And that to me is a very interesting given. Kind of, and it's not only in the East, it's not only in the West, it's not only in the third world, it's everywhere. And that is probably a common denominator through this whole issue, that everywhere people start noticing that it is not a fantasy, but that it is extremely real. Huh?
Nice. I think efficiency is a word that appeared a lot in our talk today, and I think it's something that for our homes, for our cities, it's something that congregate all the thoughts. I think very interesting. It has been a great conversation, but our time is ending. I would like to ask for each one of you to make some final comments and to conclude it, please.
Yeah, well, I can start. I think that this the main issue of the conversation, how the COVID-19 crisis has affected us. I really honestly hope that it will be a sort of kind of a planetary nudge to the humankind to kind of see the kind of vulnerability that our entire global community have, and the connectedness that we have, and that this can be used to kind of establish ways of planning our cities and our homes, our communities that are better connected and in very close relation with nature and with the environment, because I do think that there is a connection. And to me, it's like a very clear sign that when a small germ can enter the bodies of an entire global population, that we are so deeply connected with the environment, also on a micro scale, that if we start seeing this on a bigger scale, also I think that there's a huge potential to develop that into a more kind of with the environment.
I think, yeah, I mean, maybe what we have to learn is this modesty as beings on this planet, that we do need ourselves, the planet. It will survive without us. If we're not able to create a symbiosis with our environment, we're the ones who would suffer, actually. And we have to find our way forward, and we have to find our resilient way forward. And the only way is to find this ecosystemic kind of communication with our environment, and to be one with it, rather than to try to control it, build boundaries around nature between countries, etc. So it's really a different, it's a shift of paradigm in the way we construct things. What are our tools of making? They are changing today. They're not the same. And this crisis raises these questions in our face in a much more dramatic manner and much more straightforward way. Talking about also efficiency, I think it's also a dangerous word, because it's also about, I would say, circular efficiency, or balance between things, because we have to operate in a circular way today. We have to think of how we invest in one thing to come back to us in a balanced result that is not only economic in terms of like money return. It's also value. It has value. It has qualities. It has spatial qualities. It has cultural qualities. And what is our value system today? This is what we have to rebuild after this whole crisis, and what we are facing today as as climate change challenges.
I think it's interesting to realize that the life cycle of the Earth is much longer and much more consistent and much more balanced than the life cycles we have created in the last 50, 60 years of progression, of economy, of money, of speed, of connectivity, of mobility, and that kind of situations like today maybe can raise the question, are the life cycles that we have built are not sustainable anymore, in the sense of actually the aim that we have, namely a balanced and healthy life. And I think that realization that we might have put the string too tight and too fast to create life cycles that go so quickly, because we demand newness, we demand extra, we demand is maybe not the way to go. It's actually the unwinding of the string, and to see what was actually relevant for life of people, but also for the connection to environment and the connection to each other, because in the end, alone you're nothing. You need your community, you need your direct surroundings, and you need the balance in that. And probably we lost that balance and lost the realization of what balance actually is.
Perfect. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much, Lina, Sinus, and David. It's been great.